Welcome to the AppInTop Mobile App Marketing Podcast.
For so many mobile app developers, it's an all-or-nothing battle out there in the App Store.
This AppInTop podcast is your mobile app marketing advantage.
Let's get that new app of yours moving to the top.
This is the AppInTop Mobile App Marketing Podcast.
And now your host, Michael Bauer.
Welcome to the AppInTop Mobile App Marketing Podcast. This podcast is produced by AppInTop.com. You can find the daily blog at blog.appintop.com. Also track us down on Facebook at facebook.com/AppInTop. And of course, we tweet, so follow us on Twitter at AppInTop_com. Your app, your design, your brand. Why shouldn't you make the most of your interactive advertising? Aarki is an interactive, creative advertising technology company for brands, agencies, ad networks, and premium publishers. Its customers can create interactive ads for different platforms simultaneously, then measure engagement and return on investment across web, digital, and mobile. Our guest today is Candy Yang, Senior Business Development Director at Aarki, to let us pick her brain about interactive advertisement for the next 40 minutes. Thank you so much, Candy. We appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome, and hello.
It's a pleasure to meet you. Recently, you guys launched Ad Studio that helps create rich media ads. What's the advantage of Ad Studio for your clients?
So we find that in mobile, there's a lot of interactive ads that's missing because of the personal engagement that a lot of the mobile space need. So Aarki Studio helps us engage in those users on a more personal experience that has been very rarely seen before.
How do you feel that works as far as making the effective ads that both the client's looking for and that will work in the mobile app world?
We feel that because the mobile is such a personal experience device, we feel that the engagement and the personal level that it endeavors to have, basically the effectiveness of our ad studio allows us to bring the client to a whole new dimension in terms of interacting with their audience. In terms of that, what I mean by that is that when you are looking at your mobile device and you see a video, sometimes that engagement level is not as deep as what people are hoping for because a lot of the users have desensitized themselves from videos, or what a lot of people have seen on videos they've seen elsewhere.
It's sort of commonplace, so they're desensitized to it. Yeah.
Exactly. So by bringing in the interactiveness to the advertisement, these users are now engaged in a whole different level. Now they can play the games or they can see a segment of the interactions with the ads. So for example, let's say you have a mini game version of your ads placed in the mobile device. Because these users can now interact with these ad units, they can play the little mini game, or they can view a funny video clip but interact with that funny video clip in a whole new dimension. So,
and is this something that the actual client feels like they're having a say in, rather than just kind of signing off on it? I mean, they're actually involved in the sort of creative aspect of it as well.
Yes, definitely. These clients are actually very engaged in it. There's a lot of review process and approvals from these clients because some of these interactive clients are actually brands who has a lot of definition in terms of what they want and what they can approve and what branding aspects that they want inside these interactive ads. So there's definitely a lot of approvals for these types of ad units.
Can you give me, Candy, a couple of examples of ads that you guys have recently put together, what you would consider to be the more successful cases, and what you would kind of point to when you're talking about the ad studio and what you guys do at Aarki?
Sure, definitely. Some of the ads that we've put together were for Zynga and EA. More noticeably were the ones for Zynga because they've been using our studio very actively for the brand engagement inside their applications. For example, with Words with Friends, we've had a couple of very interesting ways of delivering the ad units, as well as withdraw something. So basically, we have these ad units that look almost like the native ads themselves, native application themselves, so that the branding are almost like as if the user is playing part of the game. But on the background, the brands are allowed to express themselves. One of the more interesting ad units that we have is a ad for Honda, where we had a 360 view of the car itself after the user engages within things like Words with Friends. And then there's like scramble pictures that are put on top of the cars.
Gotcha. So it's a game within the game, if you will, if you just from the user's standpoint.
Exactly.
Interesting. I kind of like that concept. Does the effectiveness of ad format differ by country and the type of app at this point? Are you guys recognizing that?
We are not, but we are able to geo-target because of our delivery services. And actually, the advertiser has full control. Well, when I say advertiser, it's the publisher. So, for example, in Zynga, they can actually localize that if they want to.
Okay, so they can make it localized there. Gotcha. That makes sense.
Correct.
What about utility apps or business apps? Does interactive ads work for them as well?
Frankly speaking, we have not tested that yet.
You've not tested that, okay.
Yes. So, but we really do believe that there is value in those apps as well. Maybe the format would be a little bit different than gaming apps per se.
Sure. But the creativity level is still important there.
Yes. We find that creativity level is just very high ranking in terms of engagement because if a really ugly looking app or ad shows up in front of you, you probably are less likely to engage in that than if there's a wow factor to it.
Oh, those horrible little old ads that pop up still every once in a while, they get me and I'm just amazed. I'm like, am I playing this in 2002? Because this seems awful at this point. From a creative side, what's the process of creating an interactive ad? When you're thinking about this and going into it from a creative side, some suggestions that you have or what you've experienced so far?
We find that creating a mock-up is actually very effective in a storyboard. It's just as if you were creating a commercial where you have to lay out what you want the users to go and where the user flow is. And afterwards, we would piece together the stuff. If clients have special custom requests, we would entertain that too, as long as it still meets within the deadlines. Generally, we would just provide suggestions of what we've seen has performed very well.
Gotcha. And to what degree, in the case of the creative interactive ad, should its effectiveness be tested before it's run? As you're doing the mock-ups and you're kind of running through this, and of course there's suggestions, and you guys are pros. You've been doing this for a while. What is the degree that it should be tested at?
I would say that it's really up to the advertiser. We always suggest test campaigns, obviously, but sometimes these things are run on a specific flight date. So especially with brands, because they want to coincide with their commercial launch or their product launch. In terms of testing for performance side, such as if you want to generate ROI from like an app install campaign, definitely small test campaigns are very effective. In the near future, we're planning to put in more A/B testing and a dashboard that would actually allow you to see a lot more in-depth into your performance of your ads. Currently, Aarki Studio does have an analytics dashboard, but it is a little bit more basic. So what happens is you can embed pixels and you can test the effectiveness of the interaction rates between the first page and the second page or the third page, whatever you design for your interactive ad. And these pixels will fire back postbacks that would say, oh, okay, so maybe users like this button a lot more. Let's keep the button and remove everything else.
Gotcha.
Because everything else does not interact.
So it'll give you more specifics about what in that ad works particularly well.
Yes, and the beauty of Studio is also that because you find all these data points, you can actually push live these ad units at a click of a button. And so because you're sending these ad tags or whatever to a lot of ad networks per se, you can all have them change dynamically at a push of a button.
Do you guys find that technology and sort of what you're capable of doing can save or possibly rescue a poorly designed ad when the developers come to you to talk about that? Is there an element of technology that kind of goes, woo, thank God we had that?
Yes, definitely. For example, having the, well, it really depends on how proactive you are too,
Sure.
because you have to put in the events or pixels to provide those kind of metrics and testing. So unless you have those metrics, it's very hard for you to say, oh, this ad actually performed well or not, because you're not having any feedback in real time.
Right.
So I think technology is beautiful in the way that basically you can have everything in real time or as close to real time as possible to prevent you from losing a lot more money in your campaigns.
So if someone comes to you with what we would call right now, just at the outset, sort of a poorly designed ad, not only can your service help sort of start from the ground up again to recreate an ad that will work, but also pinpoint some of the areas where things aren't working individually or as a whole.
Yes. As long as you're proactive in putting the pixels.
Yes, again, you have to be proactive about it. You can't, listen, if I'm guessing if you've done a poorly designed ad, you're probably not a whole bunch of interactive when it comes to it, right? You're probably a little bit more lethargic about it. So from that level, you have to be interactive about the entire concept all the way through. Now, you enable publishers to target users. Where do you get that kind of data for the targeting?
So basically, the publisher actually gives us feedback on where they want to target those users. Aarki Studio just provides a platform in terms of generating creative ad units.
Okay.
The targeting is actually from the publisher's standpoint.
Okay.
And we allow them to use third-party tracking, such as Has Offers and Cochavas, anything that actually allows a pixel embedding or a tracking URL. So that's actually embedded inside the platform, and you can put it inside the creative. For example, if you put a image and you want to target for certain users for that image, and you embed the tracking link of where the event should post back. Obviously, Aarki Studio has its own pixel tracking as well. But if we're saying, like, let's say, for example, that you want your users to download and you want to track the download through Has Offers, we can embed those pixels, the tracking URL, right into the creative, so you don't have to worry about that. So when you're giving it to the ad networks or other partners to run your ad, you just give them a simple ad tag, which has everything embedded inside.
Gotcha. All right, here's what we're going to do in just a second here, Kenny. Is there a future for CPI? And where developers should be looking for traffic? In Candy's opinion, it's seconds away here on the AppInTop podcasts. This podcast is produced with support from AppInTop, an automated mobile app marketing platform in App Store and Google Play. This is the AppInTop mobile app marketing podcast. I'm Mike Bauer. Aarki began in 2010 with the idea that they could make a better experience for users in mobile. Today, the company is focused on delivering advertising technology that challenges the status quo of the advertising world. Their goal, to ensure customers can rise above their competition through cloud-based technologies that deliver high-engaging interactive advertisements across all devices. Candy Yang, Senior Business Development Director at Aarki, joins us. Candy, in your opinion, is there a future for CPI?
There is definitely a large future for CPI. I don't think CPI will ever go away. It's just a matter of delivery. Marketers these days just want to know how much money for their bucks they're getting. And CPI is the most effective way, because then they don't take any risk and on their end. And also they can say, okay, well, I'm getting a specific amount of money for my installs versus, guessing at what the CPM might be, backing into a CPI.
Do you see a range, and if you've got that handy or that kind of information, would be great, meaning as far as the range between games, productivity apps, business, and so on when it comes to CPI?
Sure. So for gaming, it's a very highly competitive market. So, a couple of years ago, it went crazy when Gree and DNA basically fought and said the CPI for a holiday should be $3 to $4. Nowadays, I would say the CPI could be as low as $1, depending on what you want to say as a CPI, because it could be incentivized or non-incentivized. So I would say probably around $1 to $2 is probably your happy medium. $3 is probably for your quality users. And in terms of other things, it could, for utility apps, for example, that could range greatly because of the categorization of the limited amount of users that you can really target specifically. So, honestly, for utility apps, it's a little bit harder to predict, but I think you can probably get it around $3 as well.
Gotcha. How do you split traffic between different platforms?
For different platforms, you basically do iOS targeting or Android targeting. Is that what you mean by
Well, that, and then, of course, what is the big share of the major sources such as Facebook and Twitter and platforms as well?
Oh, I would say that a lot of people are using Facebook and Twitter. That is definitely a large source, but that is not the full 100% because you can never get enough installs just purely from Facebook and Twitter alone. There's a lot of users that might not use Facebook or might not even see your Facebook ad because of your of a lot of other ads that are in Facebook.
Gotcha.
And also, it's not very interactive, so sometimes people usually miss those kind of ads.
When you look at something like that, how much of a share are we looking at for Facebook and Twitter? Obviously, a lot of people have it, they use it, they're looking at it. What would you be your suggestion? Like, what percentage would you say to use Facebook and Twitter, and then other? What would be the other percentage?
I would say Facebook and Twitter probably accounts for 60%, if not a little bit more. Yes, just because. And by the way, this is purely non-incent installs I'm quoting.
Correct.
Incent is totally different monster. And about 40% would probably be the other, such as recommendations, blogging, other ad networks, other partners that you might have direct contact with. For example, King.com does occasionally, I've seen it, have kind of partners that they would say, sorry, not King.com. SGN.
Gotcha. SGN.
Yes.
So that it makes sense then, maybe not an evenly spread, but it would certainly make sense for a developer to look for traffic elsewhere outside of places exclusively Facebook and Twitter. It would be a benefit for them to do that.
Yes, it is, because you get the variety. Facebook and Twitter have great audience targeting. Don't get me wrong. They definitely have the most targeting abilities than anybody else. But there is a lot of value in other networks as well because of, for example, not all developers have Facebook and Twitter embedded inside. These users are directly inside mobile. Mm-hmm. And also, some users just correlate with or respond better to rewarded units as well. So Facebook and Twitter does not offer that. So having a brand that's related to rewards actually sometimes boosts it because your users are more likely to remember receiving a reward from a sponsor sometimes than remembering where they got the install.
I was going to say, do you see that the CPI networks have their own traffic, and what's that share compared to third-party traffic?
Can you clarify a little bit about that question?
Sure. So when you're talking about looking for traffic elsewhere, in regards to the CPI networks, what kind of traffic are you getting through those CPI networks? And compared to some of these other ones that we're talking about that people, the remaining 40% outside of there, what kind of traffic are we looking at that's stimulated on their own, if you will?
So for CPI ad networks, they basically have their own publishers that they run. For example, those ads that you see in EA, for example, they have a list of offer walls. Aarki is actually included in some of those. And we have our own publishers that we basically work very closely with to provide offers for users. Now, CPI networks on iOS definitely are not allowed inside the application.
Right.
But on Android, it is definitely shown there. In terms of the other 40%, I think people pretty much are a mixture of having their own publishers, or they have their own way of, their own apps, for example, that they actually show to users. I know in the Asian countries, they definitely own a lot of their own applications to show these traffic. For example, Line is actually a very big CPI network in Asia. Which actually owns their own product. And, you can consider them almost as a CPI network in a lot of cases.
Candy, let's say that I am a young developer who's working on a game of some kind right now for my app, and I want to look for traffic, solid traffic. We already know that there's Facebook and Twitter, and we already know that that's a 60 percentile. What are some of the other places you would suggest for me as a gamer, as a game developer, to look for traffic?
Well, definitely Aarki, of course, because you're talking to me.
Let's start with that. Let's start with Aarki. We'll mark that one off there.
Sure. So Aarki is a great network to actually advertise on. We can definitely push the ranks up for you. And we also have these interactive ad units, as well as we can create your own video, which helps on getting yourself viral. One of the great things about our interactive ad units is that you can place these URLs and they work amazingly on browser. So we're a cross-screen platform for these interactive ads.
Nice.
So other places that you would also want to try to traffic for is, I hate to say it, but other ad networks too, because you don't have actually one ad network that can provide you 100% traffic. So other ad networks as well. I won't mention names because they're competitors.
Right,
but,
of course.
You can figure it out on your own. And other places that has become a little bit more relevant these days are actually what we call the RTB, real-time bidding networks, who, they've come. It's been consolidating. A lot of the inventory has been consolidating into these networks. And if you can figure out the algorithms or work with a partner that can figure out the algorithms, and by the way, Aarki can help you on that too.
Yeah.
These networks actually would prove to be a great source of for CPI traffic, because they have a lot of inventory you can test out. But unfortunately, these things are on a CPM basis, so not a lot of these guys actually provide a CPI into a CP or CPM into a CPI.
Candy, you've already let us know that you think that there definitely is a future for CPI. What do you think the biggest concern or challenge is facing CPI and a model for the future?
I think the biggest concern is if there's any changes in Apple. Apple more likely than Google, but both platforms, the largest platforms out there right now, have a chance for like the iTunes stores changing. More recently, there was that scare about incentivized installs. So that's one of the biggest concerns. And then the second biggest concerns for CPI is the fact that, frankly, a lot of people might not want to take the risk for these developers and actually giving them a CPI model. Obviously, there's always a business aspect, and they'll try to do it. Otherwise, it wouldn't even make sense for networks to even sell on a CPI. But I think that's the biggest worry there. And there is also other factors that play into CPI, right, that developers are looking at. For example, lifetime value of the users or retention rate of the users. So you might see CPI go away for CPE, cost per engagement, or some other more interesting or more in-depth model where you're actually testing for a lifetime value or the buying power of those users that you're getting and the quality of that. So there is a chance for CPI to be moved into a more deeper engagement.
That was going to be my next question. Do you see that moving into developing and evolving into a per engagement kind of level?
I do see it evolving, but I feel like the volume would not be there. Just simply because cost per engagement is a deeper level of engagement than installs. And I just don't find a lot of networks being able to provide that without the proper targeting capabilities. And it really does limit the number of users that you can get. It's a higher value user, but sometimes when you play a game, you want to play with other people. You don't want to just play with the buying users,
right?
Because that makes a very boring game. Because everybody beats you. It's about how much you can pay, not how much you can
and they've been playing forever on it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to. Here's what I'm going to do, Kenny. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, I want you to find someplace in your office there. I don't know where they keep it locked up, but get ready to get the crystal ball out. We're also going to see if we can find a possible answer from you to Apple fighting incent traffic and what does the future of incent ads look like. Again, the crystal ball in moments as you polish it off, Candy, here on the AppInTop podcast. This podcast is produced with support from AppInTop, an automated mobile app marketing platform in App Store and Google Play. This indeed is the AppInTop mobile app marketing podcast. I'm Michael Bauer, your host. We would like to hear from you, so please send us your comments via Facebook at facebook.com/AppInTop, or tweet us any and all questions and thoughts that you may have. Comments included at AppInTop_com. AppInTop_com. Her company, Aarki, helping developers weave their way through the mobile app marketing world. And so, Candy Yang, Senior Business Development Director, I'll ask you to break out the company crystal ball in a second. First, what do you think about Apple fighting incent traffic? Your personal thoughts on it.
My personal thoughts on Apple fighting incent traffic is that, well, honestly, it's going to be very challenging for them unless they change the algorithm. And I think that there's enough people to protest that they won't do it immediately, or they're going to change the algorithm to the point where incentivizing it isn't as relevant as saying for, having the users review the application or the session times of those users. So they're going to change the model, but I don't believe that they'll make it go away.
What about the concept of watching video ads in exchange for virtual currency? Your thoughts on that, and is that something going forward that could affect Aarki?
A lot of people watch commercials. I don't see any problems in incentivizing users to watch videos. What I do think is wrong is incentivizing them directly to force them into watching or doing any actions. Mm-hmm. But for Aarki, it doesn't really affect us that much because for us, we believe that our videos are actually engaging. And so whether we rewarded the user or not for the video, it's more of getting the users to watch the video rather than having the users interact with the videos itself. So I believe that if we create enough creative that is engaging for the users, whether it's rewarded or not is irrelevant.
Is this something you think is going to change sort of the face of incent marketing to begin with? I mean, obviously we know that there's the concern, we know there's the fight, but how much of this is actually going to change on the developer and users end here?
Well, that's a very hard question to answer, actually, because I can't totally predict the future, but in my opinion, that I don't think that Apple is going to affect the incent model as much as they think, because at the end of the day, a lot of the users cannot pay for things, and that's why the incent model was built in the first place. Mm-hmm. Is that a lot of the users, they're little kids, they don't really have a lot of money in their pockets, or maybe they don't believe in the value of actually spending real money in an application, because
they may not even know what that value of real money is.
Well, that too, and frankly speaking, there is a lot of value in rewarded units, because otherwise there's not going to be as much users, and that in effect would affect Apple's ratings and also usability. They're already losing quite a lot of shares to Android. I think if the incent model went away, the rewarded units, that would actually cause even more drastic decline in their users for their phones. And this doesn't apply just to Apple, obviously, but Android community is more development community because it's more open. But I think iOS would definitely start losing a lot more shares to Android community. And if you see Asia, most of those guys are using Android because there's a variety of phones that they can pick with the Android, but iPhone's an iPhone. Right. There's no flexibility there. And another thing is you really can't find anything in the Apple Store. I hate to say it, but once Jobs died, the changes were just, it went down for the App Store searches. So without these types of units, it's really hard for developers to be seen and heard.
Candy, there's a lot of buzz right now about native ads. Do you feel from your end of the business that there's a lot of hype in that, or do you feel like this is something that is going to be results driven, especially in regards to the iOS App Store issues?
I think native ads is very important, and I don't think, honestly speaking, native ads look better. That's the bottom line. You don't have your users flying out somewhere. and you retain them all in your app. So it's a plus both for the publisher and the advertiser. And I don't think that it's going to change. It's not a hype. I think it's going to stay, and it's just people are going to conform to this. It's not going to go away.
Do you have a success story that you can share in regards to a native ad?
Sure. So a lot of actually Aarki's ad units are native. So basically what we find is that by having a native experience, it does engage in the users a lot more. And when you have a more user engagement, because these ads feel like part of the game, you definitely see users respecting the quality of the ad units themselves. They don't look tacky or they don't look out of place. So native ads definitely has a lot to do with the creative as well, the delivery of the creative.
Yeah, and I know when you were talking earlier about the Words with Friends one, it made me realize some ads that I had seen while playing Words with Friends as well. What about another product that you have, another advertising group that you've been working on as well in regards to the native ad that you think just highlights that point?
I like to use Zynga just because they're so willing to work with us. So another native ad that you might have seen or might not have is Draw Something. So what we had was Kaiser Permanente. We did an ad unit for them on Zynga, and with Draw Something, you could pick certain pictures, and you can draw that and you can post it on the social feed like Twitter or Facebook, and then show it with your friends, and then you would go back into the ad unit. Another one that we did similarly is with Spider-Man, same concept, but you can draw like the Amazing Spider-Man on the unit itself.
Nice.
What we find is that once we find a successful unit, we give the advertiser the flexibility of changing out creatives for these native ads, and they can just replace them with whatever their branding is, and it works very well. The engagement level is amazing, even though and everything is templated so that they can just quickly bring it back up and use it again. So a lot of brands kind of do a last minute ditch for some of their digital spend. So this works very well for a lot of these things.
She's Candy Yang, Senior Business Development Director for Aarki. What about your anti-fraud algorithms? How do they work? And is there a concern about fraud in video ads?
So that's a trade secret. I can't really tell you how they work.
If there's a little generality you could give us, but I understand you can't get specific about it.
Sure. Basically, we look at a spread of information that we receive from the publishers and say, well, if something looks very suspicious, and a lot of the system is automated, by the way.
Okay.
If something looks very suspicious, like a consistency in the device for the same ad, over a period of a certain amount of time, then we flag it as this is definitely a fraudulent user. And we would toss that user out and ban them from receiving anything. And for videos, it doesn't apply as much because usually we have frequency caps for the videos, and very strict frequency caps at that. So there's not really fraudulent users.
Okay.
It's usually more or less on whether the user quality is any good or not.
Gotcha. Is there anything that advertisers can do to sort of fight, even if it's not on the video side, but just fraud ways as well? What right now are suggestions or thoughts that you have in regards to advertisers fighting that?
I would suggest them using third-party tracking, especially Has Offers and Apps Flyer. Those guys are actually pretty good in terms of, and AdX as well. Those seem to be the major three that are very good at just weeding out things in general that are fraudulent. Obviously, on their own side, they can also kind of monitor the users and be able to pass back users that has already received the reward or is already part of their game. So having that flexibility of giving information back to the networks or your third-party tracking that here are users that you should not reward to because these users are either A, flagged as fraudulent, or B, have already received the rewards, would greatly reduce the amount of respend of the same campaign, especially when you're working with multiple networks.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't know where in Aarki they keep it It may be in a safe someplace. It may be in the lunchroom. I don't know right offhand, Candy, but I want you to pick up your Incent Ads crystal ball and your mobile marketing crystal ball and tell me about the future. What do you see the future of Incent Ads being, and are advertisers going to make a full-on switch to native?
Okay, so for Incent Ads, I don't think it's going to go away. Just like I said before, in terms of volume, Incent volumes are just a lot higher. And, you know, it's something that users like. And I don't think that Apple will remove it because users really do enjoy having rewarded units. And for the second question, sorry, can you repeat it again?
Yeah. Will advertisers completely switch to native? Is it going to be, will there be sort of a split? And what do you think that percentage will be? Again, this is through the crystal ball. So whatever you see in that crystal ball, do you think there'll be a percentage of switch? Do you think everything is going to eventually make the move to native?
I think there's going to be a percentage of switch. And it's not really just the advertiser side. It's actually the publishing side that's more relevant to the native ads, because these publishers want these ad units to not disrupt their user flow. So if you were to say who is going to switch first, I would say the publishing side that hosts all these ads would switch to the native side, more or less, because the publisher sees the value of native ads. Advertisers only care about the ROI.
At the end of the day.
At the end of the day, yes. But publishers care about the aesthetics. So I would say in terms of percentage switch, I would say more publishers would be switching to native ads, but they won't have the same type of native ads as what Aarki is providing to Zynga right now. So what I mean by switching is that these publishers will probably make like movie theater boxes and host the videos inside and in a frame, rather than saying what Aarki is doing for Zynga, which is creating ads that look native. So there's a switch on both sides, don't get me wrong, but I think more specifically it's easier for publishers to switch than it is for the advertisers to create specific campaigns for each one of the publishers that you're using. Unless it's a big network like, Words with Friends
Yes.
and Zynga.
Yes. Candy, I want you to put down the company crystal ball carefully, because if you could be fined for that. Seriously, they could take it out of your paycheck. I want you to pick up the Candy crystal ball, and I want you to tell me the one thing for the future of mobile app marketing that makes your job easier that you would like to see happen.
One thing that would make my job easier would be if we can get to the targeting level that would allow you to, similar to what Amazon has for predicting the future, right, of what the user might want or spend. If we had that kind of targeting capability, that would make my job a lot easier, because if we can recommend ads that we know users are most likely to look at, instead of sometimes kind of guessing at what the user's the audience type is inside an application, I think that would be amazing, because that would cut down not only the advertiser's ROI spend, it also makes my job a lot easier, because I don't have to go back to the advertiser and say, well, we got to your target,
right,
but your lifetime value might have suffered a little bit.
Right. The hit and miss is a far less on the miss side when you have to have those meetings.
Exactly. So I would love for us to get that targeting capabilities, but at the end of the day, I think that because of privacy issues, we might never fully get engaged to that part of targeting capabilities. So it's a hit or a miss, but definitely having the ability to target even better than what we have right now is something that I think would be great for my job and everybody else's job in this market.
Candy, thank you so much for your time. You've been an amazing guide through interactive advertising and its evolution and what we're hoping to see as the fight against incent traffic continues. And you did it for 40 minutes. You're now free to go. I appreciate your time. Thank you, Candy.
No problem. It was my pleasure. And
to all of you, thank you so much for listening. This has been the AppInTop Mobile App Marketing Podcast. Make sure you visit our daily blog, blog.appintop.com, where you can find all this great information and much, much more every single day. Until next time, I'm Mike Bauer. See ya. The AppInTop Mobile App Marketing Podcast is produced by
AppInTop.com.